Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching COVID-19 India Fights Back. I'm Frank Rausen Pereira. On Thursday, the Supreme Court asked the centre to issue guidelines for the prohibition of the use of disinfectants and ultraviolet rays on humans for the management of COVID-19. A bench headed by Justice Ashok Bhushan asked the government to do the needful in this respect within a month. The judgment on a petition seeking guidance from the centre to immediately prohibit the installation, manufacture and advertising of disinfecting tunnels involving the spraying or fumigation of chemical disinfectants on humans was passed by the bench. On September 7th, the Apex Court asked the centre why, despite taking the view that the spraying of chemical disinfectants is physically and psychologically dangerous, has not been banned. It also said that the use of tunnels for disinfecting people is to be prohibited. The ruling came on a plea by a student, Gursimran Singh Narula, who sought a ban on these tunnels. In this edition of India Fights Back, we will look at the use of disinfectants. Joining me on the program today are R.K. Srivastav, former Director General of Health Services, Government of India; Karan Madan, Associate Professor, Department of Pulmonary Medicine and Sleep Disorders, AIIMS, Delhi; and Balramji Omar, Additional Professor, Department of Microbiology, AIIMS, Rishikesh. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of India Fights Back. All right, Dr. Srivastav, let me begin the program with you first. Let's first try and understand and analyze this issue at hand and, talk about these disinfectant tunnels, really. What are they? And, why are they harmful as far as humans are concerned?
Yes, disinfectant tunnels have been produced after the COVID came into existence. The basic intent behind disinfectant tunnel was to prepare the country for a period when the pandemic will start slowing down, the lockdown will open up, and the public places will be open to larger populations. Naturally, the timeline was not so much as to put up enough amount of scientific research into the designing of such type of product, testing the product, and ultimately subjecting it to the human trial so that its safety and efficacy can be ascertained. It was done by a group of IITN from Kanpur, supported by LMCO and Shri Chitra. And in this total process, they were able to produce a classical tunnel, which is two-chamber based. And these two-chamber based tunnel was able to clear 2% in about a minute and using the three disinfectant. One is a chemical, other is ultraviolet, and third was the thermal. Now, the basic purpose of this tunnel was to put it up at the public places after giving a full trial of the product in order to assess its adverse reaction. But what happened actually, in due course of time, Government of India has never recommended the use of the tunnel in any form. They have, on the other hand, said no to such type of tunnel, such type of use of the chemical disinfectant on the human body, because they were of firm opinion that these disinfectants are meant only for the surface. So the similar type of affidavit has been filed in the court of law. The reason behind it, that these type of disinfectant, when they are used on the human body, they are going to produce known adverse reactions either on eye or on the nose or in the respiratory system. Wherever they are exposed, they can cause the adverse reaction, and unless until you are sure about its usefulness vis-a-vis the harmful effect, you cannot recommend. And the
Right.
same type of recommendation has been circulated time and again on 8th October, 9th October, and nowhere they have said that we recommend the tunnels for the use. But
Sure.
this is one part of the story. The other part of the story is that as soon as the unlocking started, the public places are being opened up.
Hmm.
The marketing group started trying to work out a model because there was no regulatory mechanism. There was no regulatory mechanism to approve the design, to give permission to market such type of product, and there was a lot of the commercial angle also. So a false feeling of safety was provided by such type of tunnel.
Sure.
In that response, central government has issued directions to all, advisory to all the states that there should be an executive order or a legal order to any system which is prevalent in the state, because health is a state subject, that such type of tunnel should not be used. It
Right.
is thereafter up to the state how nicely they enforce these type of order. So to sum up, that there was never any recommendation from the central government to use these tunnel, and same thing has been put up in the affidavit, and they were of firm opinion that they are not very well validated type of products and they can cause harm to the human body.
Absolutely. All right. So, Dr. Balram, let me come across to you now. So, let's first talk about, the long-term impact of these chemical disinfectants, if any, or is it just short-term in nature? How much of an impact or how much of an effect does it have on humans?
These tunnels usually use the hypochlorite solution or the hydrogen peroxide vapors. Right? For the hypochlorite solution, it is basically an irritant. Right? It causes a lot of respiratory problems, even the hypersensitivity reactions on the skin also. So by and large, they are not recommended at present for use in the tunnels. At the start of COVID, actually everybody was afraid, and scientists and doctors and medical fraternity, everybody was looking how to kill the virus, right? So they they made some innovations in a way to make the environment or the places free from the viruses. So that was done, and I think that was logical when we were not knowing the things. Now we know the things, and looking to the environmental perspective, using of hypochlorite solution in roads, tunnels, or these type of spaces, that will harm a lot to the environment and to the human also.
Right. All right. So, Dr. Karan, the Supreme Court order also talks about the use of ultraviolet rays in these tunnels and how it should be banned as well. So, unnatural UV rays, what kind of an impact does it have on us? And, we all know the ill effects really of UV rays. So, why was it used in the first place?
Yeah, not just UV rays. If we, just get to the whole concept of a disinfectant tunnel as we are talking, we have to talk about two things. One is a concept of a possible lack of efficacy, and the second concept is a possible risk of harm. And in this case, both the two things seem plausible. Now, if we go to the very basics of how a coronavirus patient transmits the infection, it is basically one person who is talking, sneezing, coughing, or singing, or even talking. So those generate something called as droplets of infection which come out of our mouth or nose, and these droplets are usually like 5 to 10 microns, and they just deposit on the other person, his face or eyes, and the person gets infected. And the second thing is a possible surface transmission, and that is also when an infected person, say, coughs and contaminates the environment and a healthy person touches it. Now, if your logic of, disinfecting a person to make him non-infective in a tunnel, that does not hold true, because you have cleared the exterior of that person, but as soon as that person moves out of there, he is still transmitting the infection aggressively. So the concept of an efficacy actually is not plausible. Now we come to the second question which you put to me, is regarding the effect of possible harm. And the effect of harm may stem from the components which are being used as the possible disinfectant. So as my colleague from, Dr. from AIIMS Rishikesh, highlighted that, the disinfectant component like hypochlorite is there. And we know that many of these things, when inhaled into our respiratory system, have a possibility of triggering, irritative cough and even things like asthma. So the possibility of harm also stands, and the UV rays, if they are exposed to the eyes of somebody who's not having an ultraviolet protective goggles, or the intensity is quite high, it may have harmful effects on the skin as well as the eyes. So I think the logic of a person becoming non-infective by passing through a tunnel actually does not stand, and there are risks of possible harm also. So those two things have to be kept in light.
Absolutely. So since we are busting some myths, let's broaden the scope of the discussion and talk about a few more things, because when the tunnels came out, or when the tunnels were being spoken about, it was looked at, as a miracle product that can, keep us all away from coronavirus. There have been several other such products that have come out in the market. Dr. Srivastav, you spoke about the commercial angle and the commercial aspects of these things. For instance, there are several ads and several people talking about washing vegetables and fruits with with disinfectants, or safe to use products, so to say. So what's the reading on that? Is it really safe? Is it really required? How do we look at that?
I think this is a zone where whatever type of surface we are trying to clean with, whether it is vegetable or anything purchased from the market, or any surface which we are going to touch when we are going out and mixing with the other persons. Now, all these things have to follow the basic principle that there is a virus which has got a life on a surface, and this life on a surface varies from the type of surface. This life can be of 3 hour, 4 hour on certain surfaces, can be for about 12 hours to 1 day on other surfaces, and maybe more than that on the other surfaces. So in this particular scenario, there are different type of cleaning mechanisms which has been pointed out. So I think this practice which has been recommended by Government of India in their guideline, and this practice which is being followed by usual household about cleaning the things, cleaning the hands, using soap and water for all these things is perfectly well. But on the other hand, if we try to translate it into cleaning of the surface of the human body and its various materials which we wear, which we use in our day-to-day thing, then one has to look at it from a different angle. That angle is what Karan has talked about, that you are summarily talking about a surface disinfectant without knowing very well that what type of harmful impact it is going to produce. And simultaneously, you have to look at it from this angle also, that these surface disinfectants are also certain type of known harmful agent like UV light. So under these circumstances, when there is no law, at the end of the day, when these type of tunnel are produced, there must be some type of law which should issue permission for manufacturing them, for assessing that they are manufactured as per standard, and thereafter to allow them to be used either on a continuous concurrent surveillance mechanism if there is a pandemic like situation, or they should be used only in the test cases. Now, under such circumstances, we have to know that we cause more harm. Either DCGI as a surface device should regulate it. Under the National Disaster Management Act, such type of legal action should be taken. So what I am trying to convey to you, when the unlocking started, there are large number of profiteers who came into the market and they tried, they think, okay, fine, it is very simple. Now the mall will be open, the cinema hall will be open, and there will be a lot of business opportunities. And one of the business opportunity they got in the form of tunnel or chambers. Both the things are there. And in spite of the warning of the central government, some state has adhered to it, not permitted. Other states have not adhered to it. So the system is to be judged now as a practice which is being more harmful and less useful, and therefore the Supreme Court direction is that ban it summarily, and this order should be executed by the state government through their
Right.
state disaster management authorities.
Okay. All right. So, Dr. Balram, what's the middle path then? Clearly there is a deadly virus out there, highly infectious, causing mayhem, causing havoc around the world. And then you have this other issue of, using these disinfectants, you don't really know the efficacy of it. There's so little known about the virus itself. So you don't know what to use and what not to use, because what was said to be a magic remedy about 3 months ago, today is called to be, is said to be harmful. So what is the middle path?
I think we should adopt the universal precaution. What is universal precaution in term I am talking about? Like hypochlorite needs some time to kill the bacteria, right? Likewise, ultraviolet light needs some time to kill the virus, right? So if we will use these things on surface as a surface disinfectant or for the OPDs, disinfecting the OPDs, it won't work. It has to be associated with the normal cleaning processes. Like we were talking about the vegetables. You wash the vegetables as well we were usually doing previously. In household, you need not put hypochlorite solution or anything else. You just clean it with soap and water, mop with soap and water. That is enough, right? In the hospital where the COVID patients are there, those areas need specific disinfectant. It may be hypochlorite, it may be some quaternary ammonium compound or pentavalent compounds. That will help out, right? And what about the ultraviolet light? It not only it harms the retina or the eyes, it is also mutagenic. It is, and more the bleaching powder or the hypochlorite, it is also a potentially carcinogenic disinfectant. So what we were doing previously, how we were using the cleanliness in the home, in the hospital, or in the road. Cleaning is very important. Normal cleaning is very important. That is my view about this.
Okay. All right. Dr. Karan, let's talk about another aspect now. Let's talk about the long-term impact of the chemicals that we are now using on a daily basis, which has become like a part of our lives and which has become the new normal, where we've seen several people using aerosol, disinfectants on their seats, on their computers, on their places of work. Then there's this whole thing of hand sanitizing every 5 minutes. There are several people who have gotten into a habit of sanitizing their hand, even if they don't touch anything. They seem to sanitize their hand every 5 minutes as a habit. So what kind of a long-term impact will these chemicals really have on people?
So I think one thing we need to understand, I think in all this, we have complicated our system so much that, when it comes to a simple step which will prevent us from getting infected, we, are on those points. So for example, somebody is sanitizing in hand all the time. He is, taking all that care, but he just touches a surface sometimes and just touches his face. Or for example, he's not compliant with the mask practice. So I think the two things which are still most important is a consistent face cover used by everyone, so that the infection does not come to the surfaces and the droplets don't fly to the other people. And cleaning our hands is a very important step, because through your hands you can get the infection through your orifices like the eyes, nose or mouth, and those can transmit the infection. As far as the data goes on what the long-term effects on use of these practices or disinfectants may be, we don't have a clear-cut data on this. What are the direct side effects? But it is plausible that once you are having a prolonged use, of something which has a potential to be inhaled or an irritant substances, they have a potential of harm. So I think what we need to do is adhere to the basic practices. There is no conclusive data that food or cleaning your food or washing it in a specific manner reduces your risk. It prevents the infection. a normal washing with water of the vegetables, I think, is good enough. And then after if you're keeping your hands clean and your food is cooked, there is hardly any risk of a foodborne transmission of this infection. So we need to understand it's a respiratory infection. The faces cover has to be used and your hands have to be clean. If everyone follows these two things, I think a large burden of the infection may be prevented.
All right. Time now to get closing comments from all my panelists with the best way forward, starting first with you, Dr. Srivastav.
The direction issued by the Supreme Court is absolutely in the right scientific direction, because we have seen in past, whether it is with DDT spraying or with some type of anti-cancer drug spraying in Kerala for the chestnut, that these type of product, when they are used for long time, which may be the case of such type of chemicals being used in COVID for coming 1 year at least, so they have got a long-term effect which we do not know. So unless and until these type of things are summarily handled by a legislative method, we are not going to ensure that under these gray zone of regulatory vacuum, we will be able to stop it. So I first welcome it. And second, I also feel that even if it is continued as a research product, it should be taken to a logical conclusion by doing all those type of trials which are necessary for such product, so that we know about good and bad about it.
Right. And Dr. Balram.
Scientific evidence has to be created. That is very right. Second thing, we should avoid all this unnecessary disinfectant of hand where it is not required, as said by Dr. Karan. Right. It may kill the virus, but it may produce the multi-drug resistant bacteria. What it will harm more than the virus, So one should be very precautionary in using all these type of disinfectants or ultraviolet lights.
Right. And Dr. Karan, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
I think the message, as always, is very simple. We will all keep our faces covered and we'll keep our hands clean. I think these are the two most important things. That the festive season is also around the corner, and we want to prevent the risk of infection to as many people who are closer to us. So keeping a face cover in place, keeping your hands clean, before you touch your eyes, face, or mouth. And I think as far as the other precautions go, the routine cleanliness practices as were being followed in the pre-COVID time is what we will continue, and I think these will go a long way.
Okay, all right. On that note, then, I'll call it a wrap on this edition of COVID-19 India Fights Back. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. And before I leave, Rajya Sabha TV would like to make an appeal to all its viewers. Remember, we can defeat coronavirus by following these steps. Ensure that you wear a mask whenever you step outside your houses, and also wash your hands and face regularly. Follow physical distancing of at least 6 feet. Remember, these simple steps will go a long way in defeating the virus.